Hello, Pauline Rowe here with a short video on life writing, and today we're going to think about writing a letter. As most of you will be very aware, letter writing is somewhat of a dying art. Now, it may not be with you. You may still write letters, or you may occasionally write letters. But don't worry if not. We're going to give some thought today to the art of letter writing. It's a rare thing because many writers, many people now who would have written a lot of letters in the past, other than professional or formal ones, now use email. But I want to think today about what distinguishes a letter. Can you think about a time in your life where you've received a personal letter? I mean, most often, the most famous form of personal letters are, of course, love letters, and but also letters of friendship are important as well. So, a personal letter is a very good writing exercise. If you think about how much of what we know of literary history or political history is bound up in the evidence of letters, we can see how important they are as a form of expressing experience, both historically and personally. Would we have the same insight, for example, into figures like the poet John Keats, or maybe a more recent writer, 20th century writer, Virginia Woolf, if we didn't have the letters as evidence? So that's what we'll think about today. We'll do a few short exercises, but overall I want you to think about someone important that you would like to write to. So that will be your exercise for the week ahead. Someone who's been important in your life, and I want you to concentrate on someone who's had a positive and influential kind of role in your life, someone who's been a really good person. You might wish to thank them, or you might want to write about something very particular, tell them how you are now, or share something that you've achieved. So what can we say in a letter? How can we express ourselves most particularly? But as always, I don't know whether you've ever read a volume of letters from a famous writer or somebody that you really admire. They're really useful and interesting, particularly if you're interested in a specific time in history. They can be very, very illuminating. I'm just finding a book. I want to share something with you, and it's the earliest letter written on British soil by a woman. It's the earliest one that survives, and it's dated from 170 AD, and it was written by Claudia Severer, and it was addressed to her sister. So it was obviously on a tablet, and it was originally in Latin, but this is the translation. Claudia Severer to her Lepidina, greetings. On the third day before the Ides of September, sister, for the day of the celebration of my birthday, I give you a warm invitation to make sure that you come to us to make the day more enjoyable for me by your arrival, if you come. Give my greetings to your Cerealis. My Elias and my little son send you greetings. I shall expect you, sister. Farewell, my dearest soul, as I hope you prosper and hail. So, not much changes, does it, in terms of please come to see me. Please come to see me and celebrate my birthday. You know, these personal domestic messages of celebration of I miss you, my dearest one. You know, all those are the kind of things that you could share and say in a letter. Now, I just want, as a warm-up, I want you to do a short free writing exercise. As you'll know, if you've done a workshop before, this is simply a question of putting pen to paper and writing something. Don't worry about what you're writing, but I'll give you the parameters of what to write. So I want you to write something very simple. It's a message, something simple, and you can think of it either as a postcard to a friend or a message on the fridge to somebody in the house. So you either way round, it's a simple message. You're conveying something. You're either a note about something now in the house, or a postcard to a friend telling them how you are, where you're writing from. So something simple. So I want you to choose which kind of message you're going to write. Have you a pen? Make sure you've got your pen and your paper. Go and get them now if you haven't got them to hand, okay? And then I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes, just a few minutes out, and you're going to write your postcard or your message, okay? So if you start now, and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay, all right. So hopefully you've finished your note on the fridge or your postcard. I'll show you. Mine says, "Sons and daughters, do not eat the olives, pesto, or smoked mackerel. I am saving them for my lunch tomorrow, on pain of death. Mum." As if they're going to want to eat mackerel or olives, or, well, my daughter might actually. But that's a bit fun. It's a bit daft. Oh, and it's a bit Radio 4 as well, but never mind. We'll let that one go. Okay, so the thing about a postcard and just taking or your message. If you're writing a message, it's very easy to be precise and specific, and it doesn't necessarily say something about the person who's written it. I mean, it often does, but if it's just very straightforward, a letter is a much more intimate communication. So I want you to think about that. We add something of ourselves in the way we express something. If we say, "Dear friend," "Dearest friend," "My dear one," "Hello," even how you frame and address your letter says something about you and about the relationship you're in with the person you're writing to. Okay. It's more intimate, it's more personal. It suggests, we think of professional or formal letters as very much business, where there isn't a relationship, where you're being informed of something. But a personal letter is about something else, is about a human kind of history and relationship. And to illustrate that, I want to share a letter that was written by the writer Sylvia Townsend Warner. This was, she's writing to her, obviously, she's writing to her friend Martha Bacon Ballinger, who's obviously upset about her child or children. And this is an extract from her letter. I remember my mother feeling much as you do about her growing daughter. She had no son to compare me with, or no doubt she would have felt even more strongly. I certainly deserved all her disillusionment. I used to get up at 7 a.m. to play the piano and refused to do a hand's turn about the house. I also insisted on wearing black and looking like a femme fatale with horn-rimmed spectacles. But yours will wear through it and come out quite as charming as you or me. Meanwhile, you must keep your heart up and your blackest hours, and in your blackest hours say to yourself that Simone de Beauvoir was worse. Or you might call to mind Mrs. Bishop Mowbray of Salisbury. She had 12, besides a bishop. You've not had a bishop, and I trust you never will. Not that I don't esteem and enjoy Simone de B. As an autobiographer, her novels bore me. But her estimable, well-founded, impermeable French self-righteousness leaves her strikingly unaware of what a headache she must have been to her parents. So, that's a really good cheering up letter to her friend, and funny and amusing and educated, and a nice reminder of her own humanity and a realisation of herself as she was a child, and so was her friend a child once. And it's a kind of a little bit of a defence of the daughter who's obviously causing Martha problems. And it shows a great humanity. So I think that's a nice letter to think about and to look at. So to prepare for your own writing exercise this week, I'm going to guide you a little bit with some questions, and perhaps you could jot down some initial thoughts. So hopefully, again, pen and paper to hand, because you might have a few different ideas of who you want to write to with your letter. So the first question that I'm going to ask you to think about is, who do you want to write to and why? So if there's more than one person and you're not sure, just jot down their names and maybe a brief kind of summary of why you would want to write to them. Okay, so that's who do you want to write to and why. And the second question is there something specific that you want to tell them? Or do you just want to communicate with them? Do you want to just say, here I am now, this is me now, this is where I am? Or do you want to tell them something? Okay, so just jot down an idea or a few words that will remind you what you want to write to them about and why. Whether you want to tell them something specific, or do you just want to say hello and say something about where you are now? The next thing to think about is probably very, very straightforward for you. You'll know, is this someone who you will never meet again or see again? Is it someone who's in your life a lot, or is it someone that you won't see again? So if that's the case, it's really important to say what you want to say, and don't be afraid of sharing your feelings. Don't edit things. There are people I can think of who I would like to write a letter to, who have died, who I will never see again. That, and in some ways that may be a much more healing exercise for me, to write something to them, to want to say something specific. So don't be afraid of sharing your feelings. And I will remind you, I want us to think about writing to someone who's been a real positive influence in our lives. So not issues where you're dealing with something you're trying to resolve that wasn't resolved, but someone who's been a real positive figure in your life, okay? So as I say, don't be afraid to share your feelings. Now the next thing to think about is tone. In what way do you want to express what you want to say? Do you want to be very serious? Do you want to be light-hearted? Or do you want to be both? You can think about the way Sylvia Townsend-Warner has fun with the letter that she's writing to her friend, but she's also reminding her friend for a bit of compassion for her daughter. Think how we were. So you might want to combine both a bit of humour and seriousness. So think about that. Tone is so important with what we're writing. Okay? And the other element to think about before you start writing your letter is, can you put your words into context? When did you last see the person you're writing to? And what is different for you now? This is an exercise, this is a writing exercise. I'm not suggesting that you necessarily send this letter neither. This is something just for you. It's a writing exercise for you to do. So can you set those words in context? Think about when you last saw that person. What's different for you now? You can maybe start the letter with that if it's somebody you've not seen for a long time. Okay, so it's really to take that challenge to write a letter that you maybe wish you had written, or you've thought about, or you want to have written, and to really do this with confidence. Part of this confidence, remember, is that your first draft is not necessarily your last. You might write a big long letter, or you might write in fragments. You might write one small section one day, another the next day, and it might take you a while to put the letter together. And then once you have it, you may want to edit it, tighten it up, take some phrases out, make it as the best writing you can make it, okay? So do it with confidence, take your time, and that's the exercise for this week, to do your personal letter to somebody that has been a positive influence in your life, and to think about those elements that I've discussed. There's an information sheet to go with this short film, and there's some further information on that sheet about letters and letter writing, as well as copies of the letters that I've shared with you today. Good luck with your writing this week, and I look forward to the next time that we're together. If you would like to share any of your writing with me, please feel free to do so by sending it to me via email, and that's to Pauline Rowe, writer@gmail.com.